Welcome everyone to another webinar hosted by SavvyWise. What we're trying to do with these webinars is just help the tax professionals out there with the AI-assisted future of accounting. Today, we'll be joined by Adrian Cartland of Cartland Law, momentarily to see this time, not just be told about AI, but actually see some of the wonderful things that he's doing in his own practice. Just for a bit of context around who I am and SavvyWise, if the slides will play favorably with me. I'm an accountant. 14 years I was working at Munro's from graduate to director. So been at the coalface, understand the exact challenges that you face. I'm now part of SavvyWise, co-founder of SavvyWise. It's an AI assistant for tax research and more. So it assists with federal tax research, other compliance research, such as Fair Work or state duties and taxes. And there are workflows also to assist with the accounting, such as revision request generators. And we've had lovely feedback from our early users, such as Kieran, who mentioned that he used SavvyWise to reduce tax research down from 1 hour to about 5 minutes, which was lovely. So once again, these are webinars that we've been putting on. We had one a couple of weeks ago with Andrew Cook around AI governance. And then I got in contact with Adrian and said, accountants, they're starting to really understand that AI is really important, but they now want to be seeing some of the AI applications as opposed to being told about it. And Adrian was kind enough to lend us some of his time to show us today. So Adrian, would you mind coming into frame here, the man of the hour, and I'll let you do your thing.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Drew. Okay, so just a bit of background. My name is Adrian Cartland. I'm the principal of Cartland Law. We're a specialist tax, trust and technology firm. I've been practicing tax law for 20 years. I'm the chair of the State Taxes Committee for the Tax Institute, the chair of STEP South Australia. I'm a tax lawyer who fixes things that are broken and breaks things that are fixed. I take instructions exclusively from other accountants and lawyers. Now, I've also been building AI for the last 12 years. I built an AI that has passed the Adelaide University tax law exam, been a paralegal on ABC TV's AI race, and powered the world's first law firm without lawyers. I presently have a team that helps people implement AI and build custom AI for myself and my clients, and helps people with training on AI. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you some fun things that I'm doing in my firm and in my tax practice that I think might be relevant to you, and also go through answer some questions that people have about things they're hearing out about AI. Sorry, this should just press. There we go. And first thing I'd like to start with is a headline that I saw. This was last year, but the date is important, the 20th of August. And this headline is that the founder of Google's generative AI team says, don't even bother getting a law or medical degree because AI is going to destroy both of these careers before you can even graduate. Now, I bet that you've heard all sorts of people say that AI is going to replace you as an accountant, replace you as a lawyer, replace you as a tax advisor. Now, I can tell you, I'm not replaced yet. Also, on that same day, MIT released a report that 95% of corporate generative AI pilots failed to deliver results. Now, this is broadly consistent with my experience as well. Now, how is it that we can have these two wildly different claims come out, published on the same day? And this is not unusual. You're hearing constantly that AI is going to replace professionals. But then people say, I spent all this money on Copilot and it doesn't work for me. Why? And the reason is that there are three economies. The first is that I call the hype economy. And this is where you're hearing all of this hype news. And the hype economy comes from people who are trying to do things like sell shares in their company. They're trying to raise money and they're going to say, my AI is amazing. It's the most wonderful thing. It's going to replace all accountants. So therefore, look how big the accounting industry is. And so therefore, my AI must be worth that much money. They're trying to sell books on the future of the professions, which always seems to be that all the professionals are screwed unless you buy my next book. They sell newspaper columns, clickbait headlines, maybe change management, because everything's screwed. So we're going to have to help you adapt and rewrite your business models. That's the hype economy. There's actually an intermediate economy, and I'm going to call it the software economy. Now, the large generative AI models, large language models, they are built by coders and used by coders. They understand software really, really well. And there is a lot of training data out there. There is software is something that you can test to see, is it successful or not? If I said, make some software that says hello world or a web page or a chess game, this is something that you can objectively test. And as part of objectively testing whether it's correct or not, that makes it easier to train. And because it makes it easy to train, it also makes it really useful. These guys are early adopters of technology because they build it. There is a massive gain in software development from generative AI. Where you are seeing some use cases of people saying, I'm getting 10, 100 times productivity from my engineers. One thing that's really interesting is that I've heard a lot of people vibe coding, and I'm not actually, I think that's an interesting toy, but ultimately you should get a professional to do something if you want it done well. And I'm going to come back and maybe explain why that is. But interestingly, the engineers say we can replace accounting, and the accountant's like, I've been vibe coding something, and I don't need an engineer. Both of them are wrong. You should only do things that you can only use AI to do something you could otherwise do. Then the third economy, and this is the economy that we live in. This is the real world economy. This is where failing, where these projects implement and fail, and people are unhappy with them and go, "You've been selling me a whole bunch of hype." If your AI can do something and it can go off and give you some tax answers that are 90% correct, 90% of the time it's right, that is a failure. Brakes on your car that work 90% of the time are failed brakes. If you are giving tax advice or drafting something and 1 out of 10 times it's wrong, that's it. You're done. You're negligent. Now, a parachute needs to open every time. And there is not an objective test for what constitutes good tax advice, what constitutes good accounts. It might seem rigorous and structured, but ultimately we require human review. These are complex systems. They're highly regulated. We've got to be dealing with humans and government and legislation and rules and businesses and all this stuff. And that is really, really difficult. This is not like chess. This is not like coding a website. It's quite a different thing. Also, the niche expertise of professionals like you and I are not understood well by people who are hyping, people who are coding. And there is a lot of Dunning-Kruger effect. You can see, so there are some very smart people who have raised huge amounts of money who think that they are domain experts in everything. And I can tell you that they're not. Put simply, all the people who are giving excessive hype, they don't understand the law or the technology or both of them. Now, you say, I've got this cool AI. I've spent money on an AI. I was promised it. It was great. But I implemented it and it sucks. And no one's used it. I'm going to give you 2 reasons why. First of all, you haven't set it up right. You can't just say, here's a bucket of stuff and use it. LMs are trained on data, like tax law. If you asked any of the off-the-shelf AI, a tax question, it's going to have a pretty good answer, a stab at getting it right. On the other hand, it doesn't retain that information specifically. It is a different task for it to generate something that is approximately correct using a lot of randomness, to search and find something and bring it back for you. A search is quite different to generating text. Now you say, why don't I just upload the tax laws into ChatGPT and or Copilot, and there we go. Well, first of all, first you need to scrape them. Then you can't just upload lots of documents called document one, also document one. Are they labeled? You need to label all the documents. Then you need to tag them with certain metadata in order to be able to search. If you're scraping the internet, sure, we can read it, and we're going to see section headings, case headings, things that we understand, that it needs to be tagged specifically in metadata in order to be able to search. So if you're tossing a whole bunch of stuff that you've downloaded from somewhere into an AI or some kind of search engine and expecting it to be able to search usefully across there, not going to happen for you, and you're going to get very disappointing results. You need to explain the structure of things to the LLM. If you want to, even if you've got a really cool semantic search engine, that is to say something that searches on natural language, and you say, I've downloaded all of the ATO corpus because I've got someone to scrape it for me. And I've gone to conferences recently and chatted to some accountants, tax institute conferences. Someone was saying to me, hey, I built my own scraper, scraped all these private rulings, tossed them into an AI, and up we go. Like, I was vibe coding it. I was like, that's really cool. But if you want to toss in, say, rulings, how does the AI know that the tax ruling is worth more than a private ruling? If you're just doing a semantic search, it's going to search them all equally, and it will find the words that are the most similar, but it will not understand something that you inherently know. And AI does not inherently know that the High Court is greater than the AAT or ART. You need to set that out in the structure. So if you want to upload a whole bunch of private data to an AI, you need to have that same setup. It's not difficult. It just requires that same setup. You can't just use a bucket of data and expect auto magic will do it for you. Let me give you an example. Because how can you really see how an AI is working well or not? Now, this is a test that I have, and I've used this test for a dozen years, and in fact, I started in my practice, this test I would give to all law clerks who want to work for me. I'd ask them this question. Write a one-page dot point memo on, if I remove a potential beneficiary of a discretionary trust, will that trigger a resettlement for the purposes of capital gains tax? Now, this is a really interesting question because, it is relevant to our practice every day. As a trust lawyer, so this is something that people get me to expressly sign off on. It has important tax consequences, but some interesting pieces about there. You've got to understand. You've got to move across legislation, rulings, private rulings, perhaps even, or different types of rulings. Case law, ATO interpretation that has changed over time. The statement of principles from 2001 was removed after Clark, and so there is a lot of interpretation. And I'll give variations on this as well. Ask it to explain for trust law or stamp duty purposes, or but something very really similar to this test. And I've just got on screen an example of something that a student's got. I usually score this out of 5. I'm after 5 things. And for me, the student gets a 3 out of 5. So looking at the screen here, we can see that they've talked about the continuity test in Clark. Look at 1 point for explaining this. They've picked up TD 2012-21 and explained that correctly. They've come to the correct answer. I think this is generally good. There is more that we could do, but this is useful and is correct. Now, I've got dozens and dozens of pages of examples from LLMs, but here's a couple that I did just a couple of days ago. For brevity, I've got Grok on the left-hand side and Gemini on the other side. You get similar results from all of them, all of the major models. I honestly think for like this question, ChatGPT, GPT 5.2, which is in ChatGPT and Copilot were a bit better, and Claude, like absolutely abysmal, like total failure. But here, what we've got here is Grok. It's come back and it's picked up, the legislation 104.55 or 104.60. Like that's nice, and I'm giving it a point there. It said that it needs the power. It does like sort of indirectly reference TVU 2012-21. Gemini, I think, is a better answer. It more specifically answers these things. Again, it's not quite as good as the law clerk. I've seen base models give like on par with the law clerk. And now I can see that there's some questions coming through. I might just have a look. If you've got questions, Drew, could you monitor these questions if there's something to do? Raise it with me. I'm happy to answer questions as we go, but I do find, particularly for online presentations, the flow is better if I talk. I'm happy to talk it and take questions at the end. Now, here is here's an example from a properly set up RAG that I've RAG is retrieval augmented generation. And this is actually, it gave me 5 pages of stuff. I can only extract a bit of it here, but you can see that it starts off with analyzing Clark, like the full federal court. It hits TDU 2012-21, but then also goes into further stuff. It starts off trust splitting, then goes on to the new trust view and the no new trust view, like analyzes things like the ATO's view of DIDA and how this is inconsistent. Between their trust splitting and other views, then talks about the substratum, criticizes the substratum issue. It is producing work at probably like a senior associate level, and that's just an off-the-shelf LLM, just set up correctly. So, second reason why your AI sucks. You don't have any training on it. Now, I've got an example here from this week's The Daily Cartland. If you don't follow me on LinkedIn, you should, because I'm really funny. And each Wednesday, I have a spoof newspaper. I just want to be clear, it is a humorous parody newspaper called The Daily Cartland. And this week's one is IT training session derailed when senior partner asks how to double click. Now, I'm sure some of you are groaning. There's probably some of you who are like, what do you mean? How do you double click? Is it one left click or one right click? Or is it 2 right clicks? Now, even though this is a parody and making gentle fun of like an awkward situation, this highlights a problem with training. If you've got someone in there who in an IT training session who is not understanding fundamentals of their software, and yet a whole bunch of people who are sitting there going, "Cool, I know how to do this. Let's move. Let's go. Let's have some fun." You have not properly designed your training systems correctly. And in fact, you shouldn't be, particularly for something like AI, you should not be taking off-the-shelf training systems, and I've not seen any that are suitable. The way that you should do a training system for implementing like an AI for your firm is, first of all, you need to understand what people are actually going to use it for. You need to come in and look at people's workflows. Like what a senior partner is going to use an AI for is very, very different to what like the research associate is going to do or the secretary is going to do. Before you say, here's an AI, here's how you get in there, here's some stuff that you do. Or even just with your ordinary upgrades to your filing system. Like you're all going to be sitting in an office like staring blankly at the walls while you go through like a really boring AI training session. Now, if you think that I'm wrong and you go, you know what, I love IT training sessions, they are the most exciting thing, and I'm not just going there for the free lunch. Like, you tell me, like, you push back on this, I don't mind. But in my experience, they're almost always awful because they haven't been thought through, and you need to go, what do the individual people want to get out of this? And let's tailor it to them. And when you do that, then you can create something that is very good and very useful. And what happens is when you've got a piece of technology that people don't know how to use, you end up with shadow technology. So the MIT report that I was talking about before, they found that only 40% of companies say they purchased an official LLM subscription, but workers from over 90% of companies they surveyed reported regular use of personal AI tools for work tasks. In fact, almost every single person used an AI in some form for their work. So what's happening is your staff, they know that there is so much potential out of AI. They are using it, and they are using it unofficially because they can do stuff, but have you given them the right sandbox to do this in? And what's happening is their personal AI, that is not an enterprise-grade AI. That does not have the security, the safety, the confidentiality. You are potentially losing legal professional privilege or accountant's privilege. Who knows what's happening? Is your 21-year-old junior taking happy snaps of documents, uploading them to ChatGPT and say, explain it to me? Like, that's a really bad thing to occur. This is shadow tech. Shadow technology usage has something that has always occurred, and the simplest example is, have you saved to your desktop? And some of you, you're gonna go, have a little bit of shame, and this is an online thing, so you can just be privately shamed. When you're gonna open your desktop and you're gonna go, look, I'm gonna see all these files that I've saved here as final version 2 final. And that is shadow technology. You have a proper filing system, because otherwise you wouldn't be a firm. You've paid someone for some software, someone's organized it, and you have not followed that. You've dropped it on your desktop. And the reason why is that the existing system is not customized or explained or set up for the way that you want to use. And we see this in the real world as well. A beautiful example is when someone will build a park and they'll say people want to walk from one side to the other. And the most beautiful thing to do is grass all of the park. And then we will stick a path around the edge of the park so people can walk around there. And then what happens? People don't want to walk around the edge of the park. They want to go the shortest distance from A to B. And so what they do is they walk straight across the park and make their own path. What you should do instead is work out where people are going to walk across the park and then pave that path. Shadow technology usage is actually an indicator of something positive. People are trying to work around a problem and continue on with their work. And this is you actually want to encourage this positive behavior and show an outlet for it. If people are using their own personal AIs, you want to go, let's find you some kind of enterprise grade thing for you to play with. Because learning to use AI is like learning to ride a bike. I could explain riding a bike using physics. Well, not me, I'm not smart enough, but someone who is smart at physics could explain it. And this would be totally correct and also totally useless. You see, you learn to ride a bike by getting on, and then you wobble from side to side, and then you realize that you need to keep your center of gravity in the middle, and then you push forwards, and that's how you ride a bike. You don't need a seminar to do it, to explain to ride a bike. Like, it is a system of learning. It is a system of play. You need a supportive environment, a tailored coaching to your workflows and use cases. Now, I'm going to give you an example of how I did this in my own firm. I'm not going to talk about me because I've been building AI for 12 years. I'm adopting new stuff all the time. Like, I don't need seminars. I need someone to give me the login and I'll play around and work out myself. But my admin, I have a really conservative admin. She's amazing. She does great work. I can trust her, rely on her to do all sorts of stuff. She doesn't like using AI. She doesn't like using new tech. She's a hard and diligent worker who is committed to our firm. She's reliable, but she's skeptical of new things. Now, if this is resonating with you as someone that you know in your office, this is the person that we're going to try and get to use AI. It is not like the 21-year-old who is playing with the latest toys. Now, what you want to do is you want to start with something fun, like a personal use case. So for me, like when I was playing around with AI, I started working on like diet and calorie tracking. I just take photos of everything I'm eating each day, and I just track my calories for me. You use it to help plan your travel, or I've got a toddler and a little one, and help work out baby names. Much better than baby name apps. Like find something fun, personal, like that is your starting case. Then you want to find one use case in the office that assists their work. Now, each week we have a tax training seminar in our office. We've done this for 15 years with Dr. Campbell Rankin. Myself, we have a small discussion group on really pointy tax material. It's up on my website. It's free to come along, but each week we have to push out, like we go, here's the case we're going to look at, send out material to a group of people, post it on LinkedIn. Again, it's why you should follow me on LinkedIn. And she'd have to write this each week. This would take her 2 or 3 hours putting it together, setting this stuff out. I was like, no, let's work out how to use this with AI. And so we created a template. The AI created a template. And then when I give her the case, she'll go and get a summary of it. She'll check with me these things before it goes out. And, I'll often change things, but massively reduced her time on this really simple thing. And once she did that, she's like, wow, this is cool. Where else can I do it? Can I generate images? Can I do this? I've written an email and I've checked this over. Once you've got at least one use case, and you feel confident on there, then you're going to play with more stuff. Just like when you start riding that bike, you're like, whoa, this is so cool. Now, I wonder if I can do flips. I mean, at least that's what my son thought until he fell off. Now, something else that's really important about having training, people go, I can't use AI, it's going to hallucinate. Hallucination problems is in my view, entirely down to a misuse of AI. It is like when we first had cars, Model T cars, Model T Fords on the roads, people crashed them all the time. They're like, I could just drink drive. Wow, we're driving at 30 kilometers an hour. This is so fast, smashing into stuff. Suddenly we realized we need road rules. We need to learn how to indicate. We need to make sure they safely brake. Get some brakes that work more than 90% of the time. We need to set in the systems and guardrails and processes to stop us crashing. AI is new technology. People are smashing into things constantly because they don't know how to use them. Now, one general rule, very simple rule of thumb, to make sure that you don't get into trouble with AI is you should not use AI for anything that you could not do yourself given time. Now, could you do tax research yourself? Yes, given time. Will this speed it up? Yes, that's a fine thing. So if I wanted to do tax research, I'm a tax lawyer. I'm very comfortable getting AI to do this because I can ask it to set out the way that it has reviewed things, the way it's searched. I'll understand whether it's got wrong in the same way that I could ask a junior lawyer who works for me to go off and do research and present with me with an audit trail. And I'm going to go, you missed this. I think that you haven't followed the right research path. Or you have followed the right research path. Therefore, and I'm reviewing the audit trail that you've done, and I can rely upon this material. On the other hand, I'll give you a real life example. I was hiring some new staff. They were different staff to what I'm used to hiring, and I didn't know what their award rate was. I looked at ChatGPT because I was like, I just want to get a vibe check. And I was like, cool, I feel like I'm understanding the sort of right vibe here. I am absolutely not going to rely upon that. It's really important to get people's award rates correctly. So I went to a real, physical lawyer to give me advice on this. He comes back and he's like, cool, I was pretty close, but it wasn't right. And so that's why it's really important to only use AI for things that you could otherwise do yourself. Could I have worked my way as a lawyer through the fair work legislation? Maybe, but probably not. I'm a specialist tax lawyer, not like a generalist. So this isn't my thing. I wouldn't cut myself open and remove my appendix. Just go, oh look, here's some red bits. It really matters not that I'm getting some red bits, but that I'm getting the right red bits out. If I was a doctor, though, I would probably, I'd go, well, I might ask AI to help me with my research. I don't know, I'm not a doctor. Now, in my view, fake citations should never occur. And we've just had this case that came out from the US a couple of days ago. There's actually a great hallucination database by Damien Charlatan. And as of today, there were 892 cases published where lawyers or advocate or pro se advocates in court have been penalized or reprimanded for presenting fake citations to court. And there are probably many more. So this is a really big problem. Again, in my view, though, it is like crashing a Model T Ford. Now, this guy here, and what is great about this case, though, is that this has set out exactly the guy's prompts. And he has said, taking the role of a judge, write an order that denies the motion to strike with case law support for the proposition that where the expert report is criticized for inadvertently used immaterial incomplete claim construction, the remedy is not to strike the entire report testimony of that expert. So he has set out the question that he's trying to answer. That is to say, in the same way that I've asked the trust resettlement question, he has asked this legal question and articulated it. And then he said, taking the role of a judge, that is something that you can do with an AI. You can get it to take a particular role. This just changes its tone. Doesn't change its accuracy. I could say, write like Dr. Seuss. Or I could say, write like a tax professional. Or write like a judge. I could ask it to write like Lord Denning. And for anyone who has done a law degree, you should love. We all love the writing of Lord Denning. And if you haven't, that joke would have fallen flat. So, but the prompts that he has used are just bad for this, and they are going to fail. And he's ended up with hallucinated citations, and he could have easily avoided that. For example, if he had used terms like search, which instructs the AI to go off and search, this obviously needs to be an LM that's connected to the internet. Search for cases and provided links. And then you might say search database, like search the ATO database, search legislation, search whatever. Search and find links. So it's going to go off and find these. Then you want to say, now, extract relevant quotes in the exact text so that you can see that if it's saying something, it's copying and pasting it there. The word extract makes it copy and paste. Copy and paste is not a hallucination. Now, the extract test is sort of limited depending on which AI you're using. Copilot has an unlimited amount of extraction. ChatGPT will only give you 25 words because of copyright. Claude is a real pain in the ass and will only give you 10. And then you can see that's just in their overriding rules. Then you can say something like, read carefully the case and summarize this. Now, this isn't something for you to rely upon. This helps you with your search process. This helps you speed up your search because then you must get to the most important step at the end, which is read everything you cite. I don't understand. I've got, I'm not sure if you can see, I've got a whole bunch of textbooks here. I've got a big mountain of textbooks. Even if I go to a reputable textbook, a reputable textbook, I'm not going to just take the citation and toss it in. You'd be wrong. You want to provide some kind of realistic source from this. So you should never have a fake citation. Now the answer is not that you should never use AI. It's the case of you can use AI, but you need to use it correctly. Just like you can drive your Model T Ford, but you need to drive it carefully. Now, again, you can speed up and implement processes and workflows to speed up the review of citations. For example, here's a multi-phase prompt that I use. I'm just going to show, I've got a small extract from this from a draft paper I had a couple of years ago. And in fact, this draft paper was used in my book, Federal Tax Disputes, which sold out last year, and the second edition should be on Amazon next week. So federal tax disputes, I compile all of my knowledge that I've had for 20 years of fighting with the tax office. Now, but this is an earlier draft, and I know that there's some errors in there, and so I use this as an example. And here it's picked up some material on, this is PAYG with these are estimates, PAYG estimates for PAYG withholding, unassessed SGC, GST. And the paper says that the ATO can issue an estimate notice if it believes that these are overdue, and it creates a debt, and it has a limited scope only to do this. Now, then what it's done is it's gone off and it's searched for the primary legislation. And if you look on the slide, you can see that there is the link to the ATO website where it has found the exact primary legislation. You can't quite see it here, but on this page, but it does then extract that exact text for me. So therefore, I can see that text and compare it to what section 268.15.1 says, and I can eyeball it myself. But then it also reads that text and considers it and carefully summarizes it, and then it analyzes what is in that text against what I have said. And here it said, well, I'm partially correct, but it's overstated it a bit. So I'm not wrong, but the words that I've said, unlimited scope, is probably a bit strong. So I use this for all the papers and writings that I do. If I want to check my citations, it's just that is another review over these. It creates a perfect audit trail, and massively speeds up me getting things correct. Again, though, have I read 268.15.1? Not today, but yes, I did. When I was writing this book. Here's another thing. I've written some really cool papers on, as a trust lawyer, things I don't like about trust deeds, because there's a lot of errors in trust deeds that are critical failures. And I put these in one of my papers, and I've turned this into a prompt. We can take the workflows that we have and knowledge bases that we have in our firms and turn this into workflows and usable prompts. And so here I've taken this extremely detailed papers and writings, and I've just got a small extract of the executive summary, but I've put up an example trust deed, which was from I won't say what firm it was from, one of the online providers, it said that it's got it seems there's a formation risk. That is to say, it's probably unlikely that it was set up correctly. But we need to actually check that correctly. That's something to check. There are problems with it in my subtrusts and UPE drafting. It sets aside an amount automatically, and this is something that is currently being considered by Bendel in the High Court. It was considered in the AAT at first instance, then ignored in the full federal court, and now the High Court, you can see from the transcript that they are rather excited about this. And my view is they seem to be on my side, or at least paying attention to the things that I thought were interesting. And so it's gone through and found these issues. Obviously, this is not an answer, but this is a fast review. And highlighting a number of issues in the same way that I might get a junior to go off and go read all the stuff and bring me back a summary of material. I'm not going to trust this. I'm not going to give this advice to a client. This is a pretty good first draft. So now I'm going to turn to sort of last fun thing I'm going to show off. How I, a lawyer who is not an accountant or good at being an accountant, have been doing accounting for the last 6 months. So I do a lot of tax disputes, hence my book, Federal Tax Disputes. And I had some clients who were ethnic cafe owners who, in surprise to no one, were not paying all of their tax. But it turns out that there were some complex reasons for that. There were some mistakes, there were some errors, I needed to respond to the tax office and explain all this material. But all of their accounts were potentially nominees for a Pulitzer Prize in Greatest Work of Fiction. And by the way, I just want to say, all the material in here, I'm slightly changing. I'm not disclosing client information. This is something that I've done for a couple of clients. So this is not exactly an exact story. But Turns out no proper accounts have been done or anything that we can use in our submissions. And we have a short ATO deadline with some very aggressive tax officers. And now, if we don't respond or respond with the correct amounts, and we can't set the narrative, like the consequences for this are very dire. The tax officer is going to proceed, issue default assessments, and go after the clients, which is really bad. So, like, I had to do 30 entities for 4 years from nothing, from just their bank records of like they had 3 to 6 accounts for every entity, and there was just a jumble of stuff, a huge pile of receipts, and I had a couple months to do this. And the alternative postulate was that this is impossible. So at present, I have got to creating 1 year of accounts from this nothingness with 3 days of law clerk time. That is to say, like, their accountant was doing this for maybe $10,000 to $15,000. I'm sure you guys will understand the level of work it is to produce accounts from a shoebox of junk for an actively trading and busy business. And I have a law clerk who has I have a bunch of law clerks, but they have like no experience in accounting. They have not done anything. I hired a whole bunch of them just for this. And in about an hour or so, I taught them how to use these AI systems that I'm about to show you and workflows. And they would, in 3 days of a law clerk, I would have fully completed accounts that have a perfect audit trail of how they've been completed. So about 10 to 15% of the regular cost of doing so. That is to say, the cost of doing it following this workflow is reduced by 90%. Like, this is not just a trim. This is huge. To be clear, once you've done this, like, I'm not going out competing with my own clients. Like, I'd like to be in practice for another 40 years, and you don't maintain a practice by competing with your clients. Honestly, we're not set up. We're a law firm. We don't want to do this. We just had to do it because there's no other option. But once we're finished, we have taught the client's accountant how to do this, and now they're like, "Wow, this is amazing! I'm going to do this for all my other clients." So I'm going to show you some stuff. First of all, we're going to start with the primary documents. Here's an example, and these are not real things. A bank statement. You can skip this step if you have a bank feed. You take that bank feed or invoices, if they're all, and now you might need to OCR them and extract that data, in which case you go to step 1.1. Otherwise, you're just going to take that raw data and proceed to step 2. If you are extracting it and following step 1.1, you do need to do a human audit of these things. You do need to monitor things for hallucinations. This is something that, like, using certain prompts and if we overload the AI too much, we would end up with hallucinations. You can't dump 100,000 documents into an AI. It's just going to shit the bed. You can't give it too much. We have to chunk these up into small pieces, like say a month at a time for one thing. And we're going to do this with one task. And we've turned out we can then run one task and then open up 7 or 8 context windows, and then you go, here's 1 month, here's the next month, here's the next month, extract all the stuff. And so we're repeating things while the AI churns over. But certainly we're this is something that you need to carefully think. We can't, just like I spoke about earlier, you can't just assume that AI is going to do this with auto magic. So if we are going to clean and extract the data, here's something from our workflows. This is in Perplexity, actually, which is what's called an AI wrapper. And here we can see that we have put in the bank statements and some instructions, and then said like you to extract it. Then it produces that on the right hand side. It's displaying what it's produced. So what this is just taking it from the bank statement, extracting it. Now there are companies that do this, that plugins to Xero, so on. That's fine. I don't care, if you've got the data all in electronic format. That's great. But this same process applies to how you can extract from invoices, from other documents. You need to have things in an ordered form. Then once you've done that, we're going to create some mapping logic and rules. So we're going to list off all the rules for the AI to follow and learn from. So we're going to say there's an FPOS settlement that's for sales, like that's you're going to map that to 4,000 sales. We just have this like one line, just what we've got here. There's a Shopify payout, that's going to be sales, that's going to be income. If I've got a fictitious company here that does e-bikes, then it has there's an e-bike importers, that's going to be cost of goods sold. Bank account fees, map to bank charges as an expense. All of these things. Now you can actually train this on previous data that you've done, or you can write it out one by one. This is actually quite a different process to the way that you'd ordinarily do accounts, because normally you go through and you look at each entry one by one, go, what is this, what is this, what is this? Here we're going to categorize everything, and then we're going to work out all of the rules first, and then apply all of these rules to the entire a month at a time of bank statements, month at a time, and then say apply these rules there. So then once we've applied these mapping rules to the data, this will create a trial balance, general ledger, suspense account for things that didn't understand, journal entries where we need to move things across, between accounts. All of these things are created at the mapping rule level. Now, of course, then we're going to have to review the suspense account. Maybe it might be a small amount that's unreconciled. There could be large amounts in the suspense account. Depends on what's in your mapping logic. And again, if you're missing things, it doesn't get coded incorrectly. It just goes to the suspense account. The reason why we don't have hallucinations here is because we are using specific terms that are instructional terms that make it do something, not make it generate something. It is taking an action. It is transforming data, copying it from here, considering it, moving it over there. All of those things do not require generation and do not have hallucinations. On the other hand, if you do push it too far, you do need to monitor it, and you'll see hallucinations. One thing that's great about accounting, this is a great way of reconciling things at the end, and you can check. So you do need to audit for hallucinations, but this is auditing is something that we are used to. Now, to the extent that there's the suspense account, if there's a lot of material in there, sometimes you might just do it manually, or you could just update your mapping logic and rerun the mapping program. Then you go, let's turn this into a P&L, a balance sheet. You could just upload that data straight into Xero and go, cool, you do it. This doesn't matter. This isn't a specific set of things we're trying to do. This is an example of a workflow that I've developed for this, and now this isn't a product that I'm selling. This is I'm going to show you how to do this. And it's going to be different for every person. Every person is going to want to have their own workflows. Again, come back to the initial thing of how do you use AI? Well, first of all, I need to understand what are your existing use cases. I can't just say, oh, here's a document, run this. So it might not work for you. So now what's great with this is that we have a perfect audit trail here. Every transaction is linked to a base record, invoices, bank statements, and so on. So then when I've provided these to the tax office as part of this tax audit, I can say, this is what we're claiming. We're claiming these deductions, these expenses, this here. And I have a perfect audit trail or something rather than just someone's calculations. And again, I've done this all with AI. Doesn't mean you need to do all of this at AI. You could do some of these steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more, less, whatever. Again, things need to fit into your existing workflows. Here's another example of this similar process. Is just for your GST reconciliations in your VAS. Going through and considering whether something is an input tax supply, whether you can claim GST on there, whether you charge GST. This takes time. It's manual, it could be just a couple of hours of time, for a small client, but it still takes time. You can apply a similar mapping logic and get it to review and extract all of the text from the invoices. Get it to review. You say these type of things, it says that it's this is its GST status. If you're ordering a big box of peaches, it's food. On the other hand, if you've got a bunch of motorbikes, well, that's, there's going to be GST on that. You can extract that data from zero. Then once you've done this, you can, re-upload all of this, out at the end. And again, this is something that you're going to want to build into your existing workflows. Maybe you go, cool, I just open up a context window and I'm going to manually do this. If you're a small practice, that might be the workflow that you create. If you're a large practice, you probably want to have some connectors to help do this automatically. So here's something that we end up with, a full audit trail on reconciliation. You can just do this in about 15 minutes. So you can set up connectors, with your existing systems to connect up to an AI, to set up these workflows in a more structured manner, to again reducing further time and variance. But you end up with here's the supplier, here's the invoice, here's the GST, here's the method, and obviously you're going to have some portion of these you're going to review, particularly as you're setting up and testing this. So I'm missing an image here. Will AI take our jobs? So I've just shown how we can do a whole bunch of accounting stuff that is your bread and butter as part of I've shown you how you can do this and how AI can do this, and you go, wait a second, if we reduce our work by 80%, what are we going to do? We're going to have to fire 80% of our staff. Oh, wait a second, there's supposed to be a demand and supply curve here. Oh, there it is. Huh. What's funny is people I have an AI firm and I still have problems with technology. So here, so what happens is, we have a demand curve. The demand curve is blue one is downward sloping. On the y-axis we have prices, on the x-axis we have quantity. So we are not moving the demand curve. People have this same demand for accounting services that they have. We are shifting the supply curve outward to the right. That is, we are making the production of services cheaper. That moves us along the demand curve. So therefore, we will produce goods where they intersect. So they will be for a lower price, but for a greater quantity. What does that mean? We do more work in the same amount of time. And you go, where does that more work come from? And the answer is that it's work that was previously impossible. If someone had come to me 12 months ago and says, I need someone to produce 30 entities of accounts from not just a shoebox of junk in a couple of months, I would have said, that's impossible. I'm sorry, you're just going to have to take a pantsing from the tax office. Now, instead, I'm going, here is something that is otherwise impossible, and we're going to do this, and I'm going to invent a way of doing this. And here is the coolest part. The movement along here takes time. That is, it takes time for price to adjust. People don't know how cheaply things can be produced. How do you know that? Well, because I'm telling you now, and I know it and you don't, and now you know it, and now you can do this, but anyone who's not here doesn't know it. So even the supply curve, you can be the first mover in this, which means that you have the ability to produce things at a greater quantity, but still at the higher price. There is an opportunity to make super profits over the next, I think, 2 to 4 years while markets adjust. Now, last slide. How do you pick the right model? What AI is right for you? Now, this is a difficult thing. You're going to need to think of what are you going to do? What is your use case? I think picking an AI model is what is the best ice cream? It is a personal choice. Is chocolate better than vanilla? I don't know. The model that you use may differ between the user, the task, the workspace. I use a bunch of things and I switch between them, and literally I'll change my preference from week to week as they update the models. So what you should do is you should make sure that you have a bunch of really cool things that are current. So you might say, I want to be training and using SavvyWise because this is a cutting edge tax research tool. And then I might have my Copilot subscription for doing other tasks. And I'm going to play and I'm going to use different tasks for different things. And you want to understand them because there is so much cool stuff that we can do. You want to you want to play with multiple models. This is not, you shouldn't be there listening to some salesman saying, this is the only thing for you. If they're saying that, probably they're not a professional. One thing I really like about SavvyWise and Drew, as I said, he's an accountant, he's been here for 14 years. He's worked at the same coalface that you have. I've worked at the same, I work in tax, I do the same thing. There are a lot of blow-ins in this industry. There are a lot of people who are like, I've done marketing for 10 years and then I've decided that I'm going to revolutionize law. I'm like, what do? You're going to be out of business in a couple of years when ChatGPT releases your entire product as a feature. For example, Claude has released Claude Legal this week, which has put a bunch of legal tech startups out of business. So what you should do is you should look to someone who built a product who actually knows and works in this space and can say that I've got something that would work for me and that therefore that is appropriate for you. But you want to play with things, look at and test it. Make sure that your AI has proper setup and training. If you've got something you're like, this isn't working, don't go, this is junk. Probably there's actually some really cool stuff that you can do because there is some really cool stuff that you can do. You just need to make sure that it's set up properly. And my own plug here, this is what I do. I've actually a tax law firm, but because there isn't really an alternative on how to do this, I have a bunch of clients on a wait list to help with AI setup and training and stuff. So you should add me on LinkedIn because I'm really funny. And otherwise, if you reach out, I'm pretty easy to find. And I'd like to say thank you very much. If you've got any questions, otherwise I hand back to Drew.
Fantastic, mate. The one question that came through in the chat throughout was around should I rely upon the references to the Tax Act because AI hallucinates? And I think you definitely hit that mark throughout the whole conversation. Yes. Read the primary source.
Yes.
Is the
Well, also the thing to do this is if the AI is producing the Tax Act from its memory, that could hallucinate it. That could hallucinate. And I will just show you exactly. So here, where I'm showing these public models, now we can see here the one. So Gemini does have a link to it. There is a small thing here. This is where it's picked it up. But otherwise, it's picked this explained this material from its memory. That might be incorrect. Now it does have a link, so you would go through and read this. But when I have gone through and you've got extract this text, it has followed the extract function and those things are correct. But if it has not done that, you cannot trust it. But also you can't, I wouldn't give it something a summary. Where you use a summary is for helping you to search and find the right thing. So you might say, summarize this case instead of skim reading it. Now if you skim read it, you're not going to understand it all in detail. Reading a case or ruling might take you an hour or so, to read something in quite detail. But saying summarize it, you go, cool, this is actually about this. It's going to be 80% right, but that might be enough to help you move on. So that's where you would use it. And again, it comes back to your use case. But you are not going to be, you saw my slide explicitly where I said, do not read everything you cite.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually was having a conversation with someone who's building AI in education.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, one of the troubles we come across is that AI can get lazy with reading a document.
Yep.
You tell it to read the whole document and it might read page 1, 10, and 22. So it's all about that, those specific instructions. And that's some of the training that you can
And so that's something that I was pointing out with like if you give it too many bank when I'm say giving a bank accounts to read and extracting like data and OCR is not a difficult text. If you give it though, you know, a 200-page document, it's not going to do that, and it'll go, it's too difficult. But you want me to give an answer, therefore I don't want to make you sad, because they are actually trained to make people happy, and they want happy responses. So you can actually change how the AI responds by like yelling at it. It does feel good as well. And but it doesn't want to be sad, doesn't want you to be unhappy with it. So it will try and give you something, the answer that you're looking for, even though it turns out hallucinating is like the worst. So you need to make sure that you give it an answer that is, you need to give it something that it can do. So that's why, like, you know, for these accounts extraction, I've found that, you know, a month at a time is generally enough. But if I had, like, you know, if someone's doing hundreds of transactions a day, you know, I might, you know, make it much smaller, make it, you know, a couple of days at a time. So
it's best, I feel, to learn from someone who's been there and done it. So if I was still practicing at Munros, I'd definitely be jumping on your wait list as quick as possible to get the training for our team. So thanks very much for sharing that. I think we could sit here all day and talk in AI, but I know the accountants on the stream are very busy.
Yep.
And get to the work. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Drew.
Thank you. And yeah, if you have any questions and you want to send them through, just send them through. We'll send the recording out to everyone.